I was here from the Guyana Revenue Authority. This week in Focus on GRA, we will be sharing some information with foreigners who require a TIN for certain transactions. We'll have a reminder to traders about the qualifying conditions to benefit from the relief on freight charges announced in August. You'll be hearing from the Deputy Commissioner of Customs Petroleum Unit about monitoring and control systems in the oil and gas sector. Later on, we'll be answering questions on tax-free allowances for private sector workers. We'll have important messages from the Guyana Revenue Authority and more. This is where Focus on GRA begins.
School is out and it's time to start buying those school supplies for your children. Here's how GRA can help. Textbooks, coloring books, graph books, dictionaries, pencils, erasers, crayons, lunch kits, scientific calculators, geometry sets, and many more essential school supplies are zero-rated for VAT. School uniform garments for shirts, pants, skirts, kimonos, and dresses are also zero-rated for VAT. So what are you waiting for? Get to shopping. GRA, your partner in development.
Welcome to Focus on GRA. This is a program of information for taxpayer education. We begin with a reminder to importers about the qualifying conditions to be met when applying for the relief on freight charges to pre-pandemic levels that was announced by the government in August. This reminder also comes with a warning to those who attempt to cheat the system to evade taxes. Here's more. In August, the Guyana Revenue Authority outlined in detail the qualifying conditions for a trader to benefit from the relief on freight charges. The Guyana government had initiated the relief measure to cushion the increase in shipping costs brought on by the pandemic. The criteria required, among other things, that traders prove that freight charges were above the pre-pandemic rates. Pre-pandemic is determined to be any period on or before March 31, 2020. On that account, if an importer paid US $15,000 for a shipment of an average 20-foot container that had cost $2,500 US prior to the pandemic, customs duties and taxes would be calculated on the $2,500 US dollars only. Here is Controller of Customs, Mr. Rohan Biku.
His Excellency the President directed that some relief be given in the form of taking freight back to what we call pre-pandemic levels. So a measure was developed. A notice was placed in the media whereby freight for a variety of the major shipping countries of export actually, were reduced back to what we call the pre-pandemic levels.
The Revenue Authority had publicized in August the new reduced freight charges specific to the country of origin or exporting nation and the size of the consignment. The relief rates are as follows: $2,500 US on an average 20-foot container and $3,000 US on an average 40-foot container from Turkey, Singapore, and Malaysia. $2,800 US on an average 20-foot container and $3,400 US for an average 40-foot container from China, India, and Pakistan. $2,800 US on an average 20-foot container and $4,200 US on an average 40-foot container from the United Kingdom. Freights from the United States are $2,600 US and $3,200 US respectively. Canada, $2,300 US and $2,800 US respectively. The Caribbean, $900 US and $1,500 US respectively. The European Union, $2,200 US and $2,800 US respectively. Japan, $3,100 US and $3,800 US respectively. The relief is effective for a period of 6 months from August 1, 2021 to August 31, 2022. However, beneficiaries must satisfy all qualifying conditions.
The goods must have been purchased after the 1st of August 2021. It means your invoice date would have to reflect a purchase after a date after the 1st of August on or after the 1st of August 2021. It also means that your bill of lading, your shipping document, should also match that date, on or about that date, to reflect the shipment date. So, for instance, once you purchase your goods after the 1st, on or after the 1st of August, and it was shipped on or after the 4th of August, then you qualify for the freight as it would have been as at March 2020. That is it in a nutshell. Your invoice should be at an FOB level. As I said, the taxes, customs duties and taxes are calculated on a CIF approach: costs, insurance, and freight. Your cost generally here is the FOB cost of your goods. FOB means the costs overseas up to the point of export. All right, then you add your freight and you add your insurance. So your invoice should reflect the FOB level so that you can benefit from your freight. If it does not, it must be so clear on your invoice that the FOB position can be determined from what we call the CIF invoices.
Since implementing the relief measure, the Revenue Authority has noted attempts by some traders to cheat the system for the purpose of tax evasion. Such actions constitute offenses that could result in civil and criminal penalties.
Some importers may have tried to kind of manipulate the system to show that their documents, even though one document would have shown that it was purchased on or after the 4th, the goods were actually sailing months before. So we looked at those on a case-by-case basis, but bottom line, those that do not meet the conditions as we stipulate would not have benefited. So this measure basically, and the measure is now kicking in, I think persons should realize that this measure comes at a loss of revenue for the Guyana Revenue Authority and for the government. We had to amend our targets and so on because lots of revenues will be lost. But bottom line, what we are aiming for, according to His Excellency's directive, is to have this relief passed on to the consumer by way of some reduction in price.
Importers found non-compliant may be subject to additional taxes, fines, penalties, and imprisonment. Speaking of illegal activities at the border, the GRA's excise stamp control program continues to target all imports of alcohol and cigarettes. And this is to ensure that those products enter the country legally and that the applicable duty and taxes are paid. Here's what the program requires of importers and how the stamps are applied. The Excise Stamp Control Program came about in 2017 as part of efforts to effectively monitor importation and curb the illicit trade of high-valued excisable goods. Smuggling of alcohol and tobacco is pervasive and has cost the state billions in revenue. However, with the excise stamp affixed to determine the legitimacy of the items, the Revenue Authority as a regulatory body is able to validate their legitimacy and establish that the required excise and other taxes have been paid. On that account, retailers or others who import alcohol or tobacco products such as wine, brandy, whiskey, rum, gin, vodka, liqueurs, and cordials, cigars, cigarillos, and cigarettes of tobacco or of tobacco substitutes must make an application to the Commissioner General of the Guyana Revenue Authority for the supply of stamps and pay the fee required for each stamp. Mr. Alvin Howard is the customs manager at the GRA with responsibility for the excise stamp program.
It is a means of identifying goods on which excise has been paid. After the law in 2017, any specified excisable product found displayed without the tax stamp will be liable to seizure, and the person selling, distributing, or displaying the product shall be liable to a fine or imprisonment for not more than 5 years or both.
There are two types of stamps for both alcohol and tobacco products. The first is the self-adhesive duty-paid stamp, which costs 16 Guyana dollars per stamp, and the self-adhesive duty-free stamp, which costs 30 Guyana dollars per stamp. For tobacco, there is the self-adhesive duty-paid stamp costing 8 Guyana dollars per stamp, and the dry duty-paid tobacco stamp costing 3 Guyana dollars per stamp. The duty-paid stamps are accounted for by the Automated System for Customs Data, ASICUDA World. However, the duty-free alcohol and dry duty-paid tobacco stamps are accounted for by vouchers.
The broker would make an application to GRA. They would have to go through the invoice and the bill of lading. They would have to establish the true quantity and they would make declaration of same. And when that document, upon processing and completion of processing, you would have paid for the stamps. And when that process is completed, you would then apply formally to our unit to have an officer to go and execute the stamping of the beverages. It's imperative that the correct taxes are paid. We would not apply the stamps if the correct taxes are not paid. So when you would have submitted the document applying for the stamps, we would check back. We would check the Asecuda, we would check all the processing ports to ensure that the correct taxes are paid.
There is a standard way in which the stamps must be placed on the products. Customs regulation provide that the importer provide personnel to affix the stamps on the products under customs supervision. The Revenue Authority is encouraging citizens to support the anti-smuggling campaign by only purchasing goods that are in compliance with the law. Unstamped or illicit goods are known to be produced in an unregulated manner with harmful, largely unknown ingredients. Consuming these goods may result in illness or death. The measures to offer tax relief on COVID-19 prevention, care, and treatment supplies remain in effect until December 31 this year. During this period, individuals and corporations will not be paying customs duty and value-added tax on importation of COVID-19 test kits, instruments and apparatuses used in diagnostic tests, protective garments and the like, thermometers, disinfectants or sterilization products, medical consumables, and medicaments. Focus on GRA will return with news in the oil and gas sector. Stay tuned.
The Guyana Revenue Authority is pleased to introduce to you our optimal revenue management system. You don't have to stand in line, file your tax online. At GRA now it's a fact. You could go online and file your tax. Stay home, don't worry, just relax. Stay safe and file your tax. Save money and time, you don't have to stand in line. Never miss a deadline. At GRA, you can file your tax online. The Optimal Revenue Management System is an improved and user-friendly software that facilitates online services and the management of your tax affairs from your homes or offices. With this powerful and flexible solution, we provide comprehensive and flexible online services, thereby reducing the cost of compliance. Visit the GRA resource page www.gra.gov.gy/optimal to find out more. Sign up and register for an Optimal account at eservices.gra.gov.gy. At GRA, you can file your tax online.
You're watching Focus on GRA. This is a program of information for taxpayer education. Now, part of the responsibility that comes with being an oil-producing nation is having effective monitoring and control systems for all aspects of operations in this important sector. We'll tell you what measures the Revenue Authority, through its Customs Petroleum unit, has in place to accomplish these objectives. As exploration offshore leads to groundbreaking discoveries and major extractions, the Revenue Authority, as the regulatory body, is tasked with reporting of inward and outward voyages, enforcing customs procedures for pre-arrival and arriving vessels, and review of documentation relating to particulars declared for entry at sufferance wharves, such as shore bases, and the Floating Production, Storage and Offloading FPSO Liza 1 Destiny. Deputy Commissioner of GRA's Customs Petroleum Unit, Mr. Lancelot Wills, explains why these functions are so important.
Note that petroleum appraisal, development, exploration, production is done offshore of Guyana. Offshore of Guyana, as opposed to all the other products that we export. So that here we are on land, you're in your office there, Duncan, I'm here, Nikita, everybody, whoever around, in Georgetown. And there's dynamic trading going on that we're not seeing, right? There must be documentary control. There must be physical verification of what we see to ensure that the volumes, all volumetric measurements, are in accordance with what the product specifications are in terms of amount. That the quality of the assay, the samples, if you were to take any, are consistent with what is written on any of the documents that accompany the export of crude.
In meeting these objectives, the GRA appointed customs boarding officers and crude lifters to be on board the floating production, storage, and offloading vessel. One such officer is Fionn Johnson, who was fortunate to witness the historic lift of the first 1 million barrels of crude oil while on board the Lizard Destiny in July 2020. Their task is to verify the quality and quantity assurance of the crude being lifted, among other customs functions.
Sometimes, and it's not just crude, remember that drills and all kinds of other materials have to head out, physical drills, head out to the platforms out there, whether it's the FPSO or rigs. Rigs are drilling ships, surveillance, and so on. And we're not seeing those things. But here are the documents here, the line agents on shore saying to us, kindly sign here, Mr. Biko. We've just sent six drills from Trinidad, Petroleum, to the FPSO out there. And he says, okay, but he has no way of knowing if it was actually gotten there.
Integral to the Revenue Authority's monitoring systems in the oil and gas sector is cost audit, which verifies that overhead claims by the oil companies do not cause Guyana to lose out from its fair share in profits. The production sharing agreement among the Guyana government, Esso Exploration Production Guyana Limited, and CNOC Nexen Petroleum Guyana Limited provides for 2% of the top royalty, 75% to be reserved for cost recovery to the company, and 25% as profit sharing, 12.5% to the Guyana government, and 12.5% to the company.
It's in our interest, therefore, to monitor carefully all costs that goes into the cost bank. That is the bank used to determine how much they have to recover. And that is where the auditing controls and other mechanisms really become germane to this whole process, necessary to this process, because you have to now audit all these costs that come in.
A core of professionals in the GRA's Customs Petroleum Unit and Petroleum Revenue Audit Units are performing these and other necessary oversight functions in the country's booming oil and gas sector. At this time, we have some vital information for non-residents who visit our shores for business purposes on the necessity of having a taxpayer identification number TIN to conduct certain transactions. Here's what you need to know.
Anyone conducting business with the bank, a public corporation, or government departments or public authorities are required to register with the GRA for a taxpayer identification number or TIN. This requirement, which is enshrined in the law, also applies to non-resident persons working and conducting business in Guyana. Supervisor of Tax Operations and Services, Dolet Goring, outlines the procedure for applying for a TIN certificate as a non-resident working in Guyana.
The process for persons that are non-Guyanese working in Guyana, usually they are required to have a work permit. The same application form is required if they're going to apply for TIN, a copy of their passport, and we would not require them to have a proof of address. We would allow the company that they're working with to stamp the form, and that would suffice.
A non-resident who is self-employed can also apply for a TIN certificate.
Work permit required again. They will have to apply using the application form, the ID, their passports. And usually they would have some sort of tenancy agreement with the person they're going to access the building from, or so. We would ask them to provide us with a copy of that. So that would work for self-employed persons.
The issuance of work permits falls under the remit of the Ministry of Home Affairs. A work permit is a legal document that gives non-nationals approval to work in the country.
Once you're a non-national, you're required to have a work permit.
The GRA also issues TIN certificates to non-nationals who wish to conduct business with a government agency, such as the Central Housing and Planning Authority. Ms. Goring outlines the procedure when applying for a TIN certificate in those instances.
I think they would have had to satisfy certain criteria, the Ministry of Housing. In terms of us proving that they are non-resident, I think the passport would suffice. I mean, you would see the stamp on the passport to know, well, this person is not a resident here, and they would go through the same process of having to, they would not require a work permit, but they would have to have some local address that they're using in order for us to issue a TIN to such a person. The process of the testimonial form, some persons would have a bill or so coming to them. They might have been living in Guyana, or they would have posted something recently, and we can use that. But in other cases, they might use an address of an aunt, an uncle, or some close family friend.
Other non-residents, such as students, will be required to apply for a TIN certificate if they are desirous of opening a bank account. Ms. Goring states what the procedure is for non-resident students applying for a TIN.
They wouldn't require a work permit, but we would be happy to see the aspect of the passport which states that they cannot be employed. There's a stamp in the passport that says they cannot be employed. We make a note of that, and we issue the TIN on the basis that they're going to the bank. The university normally writes a letter stating that they are staying at the campus, and we usually use that as a proof of address.
The TIN application form and testimony form can be found on the GRA's website. To determine if you may require a TIN, you can make contact with the Tax Advisory Services Department on 227-6060, extension 8000.
In accordance with Part 4 of the VAT Act, a business is required to register for VAT mandatorily, or they can opt to register voluntarily. Find out more by visiting the GRA's website or contact our Tax Advisory Services section, 227-6060, extension 8000. We have your question in focus on the other side of the break. Don't go anywhere. When it comes to healthcare, we all want the best hospitals, the best doctors, and the best treatment. But sometimes the best comes at a heavy cost. Well, the good news is you don't have to worry about VAT on medical, dental, hospital, optical, or paramedical services. There's also no VAT on orthopedic appliances like hearing aids or others that are implanted on the body to compensate for a defect or disability. Sounds like good news to help you feel better for the best. Welcome back. In observance of Breast Cancer Awareness Month, the management of the Revenue Authority partnered with the Guyana Responsible Parenthood Association, GRPA, to offer free breast examination to all staff of the Revenue Authority. This activity was hosted on Monday, October 18. Here's more.
In observance of Breast Cancer Awareness Month, the Guyana Responsible Parenthood Association, in collaboration with the Guyana Revenue Authority, offered free breast examinations to all staff of the GRA last Monday. Staff nurse of the GRA, Ms. Nadine Adams, tells us who should have breast examinations.
Once you're female, of course, and with breast cancer being very low in men, men can also get their breast examined, but generally you would want to give priority to females, especially those who are 40 and above, yes, to get their breast examined. Persons who are generally at higher risk are persons, of course, being female, 1, 2, having children at a late stage in life or a late age in life, persons who have a genetic or a history of relatives living or dying from cancers, those persons are at higher risk.
While genetics play a large part in whether or not you'll ever have breast cancer, there are several lifestyle changes that can be made to lower the risk.
First of all, it starts with your diet. Of course, you want to stay away from too much barbecued foods, or you want to call it fried foods. You also want to ensure that you do early screening. And early screening has to do with detecting if there's any lump or any changes in your breast, so that can be remedied, so you can find out what is really happening. So it starts with diet and your lifestyle. So drinking and smoking are some of the things that can increase the risk of cancerous cells becoming very, very, very dangerous in the body. So once you work from your diet and early screening, that can help.
If you notice any of the following symptoms, call your doctor and schedule a breast exam.
You can look for changes in your breast. That means if you see any dimpling in the breast, if your breast is giving off any discharge, which includes blood or any abnormal fluids. If you're having pain also in the breast, especially constant pain. So those are some other things that you can look for with the breast.
Nurse Adams reminds us of the importance of early detection and treatment options.
It depends on the stage. So if it is detected early, they can actually remove the lump. And of course, you would have taken away the cancerous cells that are there. Later stages, you will be incorporating chemotherapy and, so in some cases, mastectomy, which is removal of the breast. The earlier you capture what's happening with your breast, it's the better chance of you surviving.
So we've reached that segment of our program, Your Question in Focus, and this is where we provide answers to some of the questions that you've been asking us here at the Guyana Revenue Authority over the past few weeks. Those questions have been coming via our social media platform, as well as via your emails and your telephone calls. Here with me to provide answers is Ms. Rhonda Griffith. She is from the GRA's Tax Advisory Services section, and she will be answering a question from Mr. David Chu. And Mr. David Chu wants to know what category of employees are entitled to vacation allowance, tax-free. But before we provide answers, let's first establish, Rhonda, what is vacation allowance?
Vacation allowance is a sum of money granted to an employee who is entitled to vacation leave. It is also granted in addition to vacation with pay.
So now to the question, and before we actually answer the question, tell us, let us clearly establish who is considered an employee in this situation.
According to Section 2 of the Income Tax Act, Chapter 8101, an employee means any person receiving remuneration and includes an officer, servant, person holding a position of employment.
So now to Mr. David Chu's question, and he wants to know what category of employees are entitled to vacation allowance tax-free.
All employees in both the private and public sector are entitled to 1 month's salary tax-free or free from any taxation. Previously, only employees in the public sector were granted this allowance, while the private sector employees were required to pay taxes on this allowance.
Great, thank you. So Mr. Chu is also asking, which year did the tax-free vacation allowance came into effect for the private sector?
All employers in the private sector must note that effective January 2018, private sector employees became eligible for tax-free vacation allowance. The amount of vacation allowance allowed tax-free must not exceed, and I repeat, must not exceed 1 month of the employee's gross salary.
Thank you very much, Rhonda Griffith from the GRA's Tax Advisory Services section. If you have other questions relating to vacation allowance or any other tax-related matter, feel free to contact us at the numbers listed at the end of our program. And that brings us to the end of Focus on GRA. But before I go, you can visit our website for more information, gra.gov.gy, or you can email us, grapublicrelations@gmail.com, or you can contact us via our social media platforms for more information, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. Remember, there's a vaccination protocol for all visitors to any of our offices. You must present a vaccination card as well as some form of identification, or if you're unvaccinated, a negative PCR test and some form of identification, and that negative PCR test must be accompanied by a prior appointment. Fabian Claus here saying so long, take good care of yourselves and each other.